I collected comic books when I was young, but one of the things I've discovered about myself over the years in my hobbies, I'm what's called a completionist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Whiskey at Work.
If he's on here more than once, it's going to drive him crazy, too.
Welcome to another edition, and I'm very excited for this one, specifically Troy. Joining us is Troy, sitting right across from me over here.
Troy, who shall not be named.
There's a reason why Troy's going to remain kind of secret, and we get it. There are certain jobs that you do.
Part of the reason is I can't remember his last name right now.
We've talked to, we've talked to Jeff Arnett. We've talked to Dan Bruner. We've talked to a lot of professionals that are in this industry. Mm-hmm. And we've never sat down.
I love how you throw Dan in with Arnett.
Dan is, from a whole different perspective, though. Dan is a professional with what he does, right?
It wasn't a slight to Dan.
No, of course it wasn't. But, right, I went from Jeff Arnett to Dan.
It's a bit of a...
And now I can't wait for the text message I'm going to get on that one.
I'm sorry, but he has a skill set.
Right, exactly.
A particular set of skills.
But, Troy, I'm excited to have you in here because we have never talked to anybody that is just a big fan of this entire industry, which I think you have really become. I've known you honestly since high school, because we both went to the same high school. I didn't know what had happened to you until about 2 or 3 years ago.
Well, we ran into you for the first time when we were picking that New Riff bottle.
That New Riff bottle
that I got
Cask and
right.
Cork.
Yep.
Oh, you're going to bring that up
for
again.
Timmons. I know. You see how I do that?
Troy, is there anything you want to just say to him about that right now, just to get it out of the way? Did he pick a good bottle on that New Riff?
That tasting, that was great. And what's even more surprising is that I'm not a rye fan, and that tasting we had, that New Riff rye was my favorite, and I usually dislike ryes. So
I'm glad
that
we're
was
all on
an
the same page
interesting
there.
tasting.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Let's just start this off though, Troy. I want to start from where it all began for you. And I think you touched on it a little bit when we were talking, was that in high school, you and I both come from a very small town where there would be weekend parties, either out at the county line or down at the dam. That's the place where you went to party. And
did you ever go to these parties?
Yes, I went to these parties.
Well, I don't know. You're a little nerdy. I thought you and your band people hung out.
Listen, we were all in band.
I wasn't.
No, Troy, you were that.
I was football and wrestling and restaurant and teaching Sunday school, and then going across the border underage drinking in Montana.
But the thing is the town that I came from and Troy comes from, we all knew each other. Yeah. Everybody knew each other. So we would go to these parties, and it would generally be beer-based because that was the easiest thing to get. But like a lot of people start, we would have Black Velvet. There'd be Lord Calvert. Yep. Sometimes Jack Daniels. Yep. I never really saw a lot of that because that almost seemed like that was the
higher
end whiskey, right?
Yeah.
So is that kind of where it began for you?
Yes, exactly. I had a father who worked in the oil field in the 70s and 80s, and so bottles came around Christmas time, and my dad was a beer drinker, or Wiser's from Canada, which we could not get here. But when he went fishing in Canada, he always brought his bottles of Wiser back from Canada. But he always had a stock, and so when I started hitting high school, the stock started dwindling.
So what? Obviously, I don't think you really did. You appreciate whiskey then, or did you just drink it because you were in high school and you wanted to drink?
There was a bit of appreciation. Like I said, you did the Windsor, you did the Black Velvet, but when I did occasionally get a bottle or money, you taste different things like Southern Comfort or Jack Daniels or Beam. Jack Daniels was just my flavor that I liked. Now, years later, I understand it's because of the mash bill with corn and rye and barley and their percentages. Jack's rye percentage is lower than Jim Beam's. And so that's what, now I know why, but then I just didn't like, I like the smoother, sweeter stuff versus a little burn. I didn't want that rye flavor.
So then, as you started to discover that maybe this was a thing you enjoyed, were you like in the '90s? Were you finding stuff to buy in the '90s, or where did this kick off for you?
I had some knowledge. I worked at one of the local liquor stores here in Rapid City that's no longer here. And as working 4 to midnights, you opened one every once in a while.
Good thing that store's not here anymore.
Yeah, this one fell off the show.
Well, ironically, when he closed the business, the last night we were there was a New Year's Eve night, and he said, whatever isn't here in the morning is going back. And so if it wasn't bolted down, the signs and everything went out. I backed my Bronco up to the back door, and he told us, take what you want, and I did. And so this was about 90-ish.
Okay.
And that was in that period when I discovered, well, the easy one for me for the Jack is a bourbon in my book. I am on that side.
We kind of agree with that
I
too.
agree as well.
Yeah.
But I discovered like Maker's Mark, and then through the 90s did just regular jobs, but just kind of picked up things here and there, and we had stores in town, and if something jumped out at me and I could afford it, I'd grab a bottle here and there. And so then come the internet, and I worked at an internet place, so you just start learning about things, and Google is your friend for liquor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly can be. Can also be a hell of an enemy.
Yes, I agree with that too.
What's this box showing up in our... Oh, that was supposed to be delivered to the office.
Yeah.
It's another one.
That's still today.
Do you remember back in those days seeing the bourbons and whiskeys on the shelves that now you just can't find?
Yeah, but I didn't have the knowledge at that time too. And I was like, and some of them, you know, even then their prices were reasonable, but my wallet wasn't as comparable as today.
Right.
And
I
so
think that's a lot of issue. I mean, we drank Jim and Jack and whatever because we didn't like, well, I didn't care for the Canadian stuff as much.
Yep. Yeah.
And, you know, I was a big Jack fan, but Jim was $10 cheaper. So I got onto that kick until, you know, the paychecks went up a little bit. I'm like, I'm going to go back to this.
And I liked Maker's Mark, but then again, I started to pay cheaper. I'd buy Ancient Age, which was a wheat-based one. It was the same thing.
You went bottom shelf with that for sure.
Hey, Ancient Age, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, we did it. Yeah, we talked about that. And
I joked with you guys when you talked about it. I had a
that's
bottle
right.
of 10-year Ancient Age. Now I've got the expensive Ancient Age.
that was $13 a bottle. So then, you know, as you're drinking it through the 90s and into the early 2000s, when did you start to really get serious about it? Where you're like, you know, I'm gonna start to be on the lookout.
Probably 2010 or 11, somewhere in there.
So relatively recently, really.
Yeah,
okay,
relatively.
He's got 5 or 6 years on us, sounds like.
Yeah, at least.
So like when Jack, the White Dog, the unaged rye came out, we couldn't get
White
it.
Rabbit and Red Dog. Is that right?
No,
White
there's the rye that's unaged. That's like their moonshine
Oh,
one.
yeah, the unaged rye.
They wouldn't. I talked to my friends at a certain establishment on the west side of Rapid that sells liquor. I don't know if I can say their names, but
yeah, we
we
deal with
pretty much
Canyon
give
Lake
everybody
every-
I've been to.
Until somebody starts writing a check, everybody's on the
equal.
same playing field.
I'd drive home every night down Jackson Boulevard, so I'd hit those places on Jackson Boulevard every night, or at least once or twice during the week, you know, and walk in and see if they had something. But I discovered that, and I talked to one of my friends who was working part-time there, and I asked him about that Jack Daniel's unaged rye.
What did you think of that?
It was different. I was stretching myself a little bit because the rye's not usually my thing, and it's unaged.
I mean, it's essentially moonshine, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he said that they had talked to the distributors, and they probably would never distribute that in South Dakota because of their Jack numbers at that time. So this is like 2012-ish.
By then, Jack numbers had to be going up.
They were because of the rally.
Solely because of the Sturgis liquor,
Yeah, so I worked at that liquor store that's no longer here during the 50th rally, and that's really when
wow.
the world changed.
That
Yeah.
was the last year I printed T-shirts at the rally.
Yeah, so I was working at the liquor store, and man, that was crazy for the 50th. That was the beginning of how Sturgis is now.
Right.
But anyways, so yeah, and I couldn't get it here, and so we went down. My wife and I were down in Arizona, and I just kind of like, honey, she was with friends, I think, at the pool, and I'm like, I'm gonna go for a little drive, and we were in Scottsdale, and Troy just went driving and had the phone book searching in liquor stores near me, and so I found it down there, and I bought a couple bottles and brought them back, and that's kind of that period in there is when I started reaching out and talking to a few family friends or it's family or friends, and just say, hey, if you're down here, can you run by this place if you got time? And my network started to grow, but it was just kind of quietly with a few family and friends, but I started researching more and learning, hey, what's coming out. And I was in my Jack, what do you want to say, vein,
Sure.
but then slowly starting to find things. And then about 3 years ago, a little more, we had to do some remodeling in the house, and part of it is we built me a home office so I could work from home more. And I asked my wife if I could bring in some bookshelves, and hey, the liquor that I've been accumulating in your root cellar for years, taking up 2 shelves, could I bring those in and bring them in bookcases? It'd be kind of cool to display my collection. And she thought that was great until it started on the second bookshelf. Then start asking questions.
Right.
Well, it was interesting to get the spreadsheets that you sent.
I'm a computer guy.
It's
Right.
It's amazing how many. I mean, Bruner's got one that he keeps on his phone. that
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, blah 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 blah. I don't know if Gabe is quite there yet.
No, but you must have that personality though, that because you were telling us about, when you were a kid,
Yep.
what you used to.
I collected comic books when I was young, but one of the things I've discovered about myself over the years in my hobbies, I'm what's called a completionist. And so, like, when I had X-Men comic books, I had X-Men 1 through 200.
Yeah.
And I would go hunt for 85 that was missing somewhere. And my dad was in the oil field and traveling, and I get to go with once in a while. I'm like, hey, Dad, can we go to Denver? We're going to Mile High Comics. Can I get
Yeah.
And
well,
that same kind of hunting behavior is translated to my whiskey collection.
Which one's more expensive, the
Oh,
whiskey or the comic books?
well, if I would
Now.
have kept my comic books and sold them, I could have probably bought 3 more collections of whiskey. But I kind of gave them away to friends' kids and stuff.
That's always the way it is, though.
I was nice.
You were that. Yeah, that was very nice of you to do that.
Well, it was nice. I think he's still pretty nice. He's got a bunch of stuff up here that we haven't had.
I
Well,
brought you a selection.
You did. This is pretty impressive, honestly. Well, looking through your spreadsheets, you have the spreadsheets of what you have,
Yep.
and you have the spreadsheets of what you're hunting for, right? Is that like a wish list, or do you just, being with the completionist attitude, do you just want to be like, I don't even know if I really want it, but I need to complete it?
No, I'm getting over that now. Okay. when you
Is your wife helping you?
Yes, that
Good
is-
for her.
She's running intervention for me. No, it is. No, that list that I sent you is a combination of
This
things I've read about. Because now it's just, hey, I'm, in with all the different companies, and we are in a, what do you want to say, a boom.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, I compared it when I think about it, it's like, in the early 90s when they had the Orange County guys with motorcycles. And now all of a sudden there was custom motorcycle guys.
Right.
And then also when they changed the gun laws, and all of a sudden they were AR-15s and custom AR-15s. Now we've kind of changed the laws around the country, and there was kind of a brewing thing like the brew pubs and then the wineries. Right now we're in a really crazy time for bourbons and whiskeys, and there's just great stuff all over the United States distilleries popping up, and that just makes my it's a really cool time to have this as a hobby.
So when you're looking for stuff to put on that spreadsheet of what you're hunting for, what do you have specific things you're looking for, or is it just like something that interested you that you saw?
One is, like I said earlier, my entry to bourbon officially, I would say more than just drinking a bottle of whiskey, is Maker's Mark. And so that led me down the road of wheaters. I don't like the rye heavy ones. There are some good ones that they've got rye, and I like the flavor of them. But then that's the whole thing with this whole thing is so subjective.
Right.
But I've gone down, and pretty much if you look through that list, most of those are either 4 grains or wheaters or something just out of curiosity that I'd love to try.
Okay.
And it's more things if you look at the want list, some things are like 5 stars that, I'm going to always hunt for, like you guys said, for a chase of where you would spend some money or maybe dollar value. And then the ones down the line at the bottom are, if it was a decent price and I happened to cross it because we couldn't get them in South Dakota, I'd pick it up.
So you since you said you're a wheated fan, what's on your absolute, I want to have this wheated bourbon? Do you have one specifically that you're really hunting for?
I'm still hunting for CYPB Weller.
Got it.
I have tasted it a couple of times. Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's how we got to taste it.
Yeah, we had it.
We had it at the
bourbon
Speakeasy.
thing at the Speakeasy. at
But
Murphy's.
we had a
true.
sniff of it.
Yeah.
That's my first one. We had one buddy and I had it at the Speakeasy, and then when Justin had Christmas last year,
Right.
we were there.
Yeah, that was fantastic. So you must be a fan of the Weller line then.
I am
specifically.
but it's just so hard to come across. I mean, I have the only ones I'm missing are CYPB and the single barrel.
Okay.
But I have the other ones. But they're good. It's hard to get the 107 as everybody talks about here, so you got to travel. And that's where connections and, hey, I mean, I even, like with the Wyoming whiskey, I have to be very gracious with Dan because he just texted me out of the blue, hey, do you want this bottle? Thank you, Dan.
Yeah. Have you ever come across a liquor store that surprised you with something in there where you're like, oh my God, I have to have that? Or is it mainly all connections?
Mostly connections, but I have to tell you, I did have a very strange moment. I travel with my parents who are snowbirds.
Sure.
And we stopped at a liquor store outside of Yuma in an industrial park. And I was like, I'm just going to go in and get a Coke and see what they got. And we stopped for my parents and on the way and walked in, and oh my, it just was amazing. And they had everything as a reasonable price. And I came out of there with like 10 bottles.
Oh, wow.
But the next year I came back, the
Prices
owner
have
must
gone up.
have
They
figured
figured it
out.
out.
Yep. And the prices were through the roof. But that one time in Yuma, Arizona, I walked in and it was like, where did this all come from?
That's such a good feeling when you come across stuff like that.
Well, yeah, if you can see it just sitting there, and a lot of times they'll just put it in some place where you don't notice it because it's out of context. I walked into a store here and I was getting something, and I don't know, it was a Blanton's. They did a barrel pick or something, and the guy looked at me and he goes, I'd looked at the bar because they've got it was Boyd's up on Mount Rushmore Road, and they've got the taps behind the bar. And I don't look there because I wasn't going to go get a growler filled or anything, and there was a bottle of E.H. Taylor sitting on the thing, and I'm like, well, I'm taking this too. And and it's those weird, if it's out of context, you don't sometimes you just don't recognize it no matter how many times you look at it.
And that's years ago before I really started getting it. I know I walked past
Oh, you
tons
had
of
to
stuff and just it wasn't on my radar.
Right. And you'll hear a lot of people that'll say 15, 20 years ago, they'd go in the liquor store and there would be, the gentleman that shared that pappy that he had from Stitzler Weller.
Yeah.
He said, it was in the late 80s or mid 90s. Nobody knew this existed. And he goes, I just bought it.
My one like that would have been Runnings a few years ago. I was at Runnings right after they first opened here in Rapid, and they had the liquor store, and I'm in there buying chicken feed for my wife all the time, and I just walked through, and I glanced over my shoulder, and there was a bottle of Pappy, and I didn't think nothing
What?
of it. I walked out the door, I got in my truck, and I drove a block away, and I went, "Ooh!" And I drove back, and it was gone. And the manager who kind of knew me at the time, she looked at me. I knew you were looking at that thing and it must not have connected in your brain. And you come back and the guy behind you grabbed it.
Do you have any idea what the price was on it?
I think it was like $89.
Good God.
That Pappy's not bad when you
No,
can find
the
it.
MSRP is, that's amazing.
And she was kind of laughing at me when I came back in because she's like, I know you were looking at that thing, but I know it must not have connected in your brain.
Oh, I'm sure it didn't until you
I'm
got
in
a block away.
I'm in
and
a
then-
farm supply store and here's a bottle of Pappy.
Yeah, you're not going to make that connection at all. Well, we've been, like I said, the bottles you brought up, just some of the examples you brought. You have the 10-year, the Wyoming. You brought in the Blue Note. Two different. No, that's
That's Chattanooga.
that's the right. This is the Chattanooga here. The Founders.
Yep.
We got Clyde Mays, the 15-year. You've got the Makers. That's the cellar aged
Cellar
one.
aged.
Who signed that?
It's from the factory.
From
like
the
that.
factory.
Yep.
Okay. Also, this.
I'm not a snob here. I don't think many people would consider me a snob, but like the
No,
stuff
probably
that
not.
the stuff that I get signed or the bottles that I have signed, I generally don't open, but that Maker's has been tapped.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
When we've been talking about what I thought about bringing, I recently got a bottle of Angelo's Jack
Yeah.
Daniels, and that took me several Sturgis Rally bottle trades to get that bottle. But I didn't know about it. The guy didn't tell me till afterwards, and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, it's autographed. It's autographed by Angelo and by
by Frank Bobo.
the distiller, and I was like, "Oh my god, I don't know if I'm going to open
You
this
can- I don't
bottle
think
or
you can
not."
ever
I
open that,
thought
can
about
you?
bringing it down here for you guys to open, but it was like,
If we're gonna do that, let's open the bottle that I have, and you can try it.
Yeah, I don't know. With
I think-
both of those autographs, I don't know if I'd open
Yeah,
them.
the Frank Bobo autograph can't be that common. I mean, I know Bedford got onto doing the tours, and I've got a bunch from him, from the Loud American stuff, and Arnett got, God bless him, he has been a wonderful friend to us, and he was doing it. I just don't know how much, somebody like Frank Bobo was doing that
I
back
couldn't
prior
believe when
to
I
Jimmy
got
Bedford.
it. I was talking with the guy, and he said, "Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, these are both autographed too." And like, you did it just for a bunch of Sturgis Rally Jacks that I could get no problem.
Now the one.
Well,
the
who
one
is this guy? I'll
that
trade him
has-
a bunch.
Yeah, you're gonna go ahead and. Well, you could probably. You'd have
I got
enough to
stuff
trade.
on the wall that.
So Wyoming Whiskey, our little neighbor over there to the west, had kind of a rocky start. I think that's fair to say,
I
right?
think most of the folks over there would agree with that.
I know
Look, you want this?
I know we had. Well, our company also manages a country artist named Chancey Williams.
Yep.
And I know that they approached Chancey early on to ask if, hey, would you like to be a sponsor of this? Could we sponsor your whatever? And I know that the band had a drink, and they were like, yeah, woof. we're gonna just pass on this right now. Thing is,
They should have revisited it though.
well, but Chancey is Wyoming. I mean, he's
Certainly.
he's got a huge name in Wyoming. He's got a huge following. Well, he's got a huge following really right now, almost all the way across the country. So that had to have been hard for him to turn down a local product like that, right?
I would suspect that eats at him a little. Yeah.
But I remember when we first tried it, and both you and I were like, and we were really kind of new to the whole thing too. We were like, this just isn't.
yeah,
it's not
that,
good.
That first bottle was not ideal.
Right. And then I believe they sold it, correct?
Well, they started their next batch or two. I think were much more refined.
And they came out and admitted. They said
Didn't
Yeah.
they bring in Nancy Freely to
that
help on
sounds
that?
right.
I think they
Yes.
brought her in. That's after when I started, and I thought I read something about that.
I do think you're right. And then the big one of the big companies just purchased them.
Yep.
Not Diageo.
No.
Yeah, well, that's it's beside the point. Anyway.
Yeah. We just
But-
talked about it last week.
Yeah, I'm sure we did. Look, Rob, we do a
Well, I
podcast
don't know.
where
It's
we
probably
drink.
written on the bottle.
So
Yeah.
remembering is hard to do sometimes
Yeah.
in this, all right?
Well, we had an unexpected guest at 2:30 that didn't help
Right.
anything.
So Wyoming, they have completely turned it around, and now they are. I know they've been winning some double golds. They've been in some competitions where their stuff is really, really getting attention. And first bottle I saw, Troy, that you brought in was this 10-year from them, which I'd been kind of interested and curious
great
about
bottle.
because
Great bottle.
I thought we should be able maybe to find this, possibly, whatever. And then sitting next to it, Troy, you have this leather case, for lack of a better word. Inside of it is another bottle of Wyoming whiskey, right?
Yep,
This is the Wyoming whiskey 1872.
correct.
And there's a story behind this and how you got it.
There's only 150 bottles
Crazy.
released total United States. I know another individual in our group in the area has one himself.
Has he opened it? Do you know?
I don't know if he's opened it or not. I don't know that. I would imagine he might have because he's pretty good about drinking. He's not so much a collector as a
Right.
drinker. But I had I'd called out there I actually wrote to the distillery and asked if they had one. And she said they think they had one in a bar in Jackson Hole. So I called the Jackson Hole place and said, is there any way I could wrangle that bottle? And she passed. And there's only, I think, 60 released in Wyoming and 90 for the rest of the United States. And I think it was only in New York, Georgia, California, Wyoming, and Colorado. So the other 90. And then I'd talked with a friend about it, and he was in New York, and hey, I found this. Do you want it? Yes.
Where did he just stumble across it, or was he out looking?
Have you distributed your hunt list to people?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause, like every once in a while, 'cause people will come down to my house or whatever, family or friends or whatever, and they'll be like, "Well, if you ever need anything, let me know."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, I don't know how to tell you that."
So for some people, my friends who are more tech savvy, they get the list. Other friends who are just kind of like, they want to help me out, like my cousin who's a drug and alcohol counselor at the Penn in North Dakota. I can give her the list. But some other friends, to make it easy, I just say, if you go somewhere and you see a bottle of Jack Daniels that looks unique or Maker's Mark, I give them like about a short list of about
Right.
5 brands.
Sure.
And say, if you see these 5
That's
brands,
smart.
call me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're pretty cool about it, family. They think it's kind of funny at first, and then when they see my collection at home, they're like,
They're like,
"Oh, this isn't a joke."
yeah, you're
not
dead
an
serious about
alcoholic
this.
either.
Yeah,
if your cousin shows up at your house and with the rest of your family, then there's going to be a talk.
Yeah, we'll have a talk, but
So he finds this bottle. Where in New York? Do you
I
know
don't remember
for sure?
what town it was. He went to School of Mines with us out here,
Okay.
and he's out there and he travels.
So can I ask what you paid for this? Did you say this was the most expensive bottle of bourbon you'd ever bought?
Yeah.
Okay. Does your wife know
Yeah, but
first?
but
Does she
even-
know
she
first?
doesn't know the
oh,
number.
she doesn't know. Okay, great. Don't
But
tell her.
even the number on that he told us off mic
Right.
doesn't seem extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, you guys come from the Scotch world.
No, I do not come from
Okay.
the
He
Scotch
doesn't.
world.
I might a little bit more, but I
But-
still don't have the money for it.
But for something that only has 150 bottles, I mean,
I had been saving my slush fund, and
Yeah.
it was like, I got to get this because I'm never going to see it again.
Well-
so I did that something similar. I had jars and jars and jars and jars of coins during the
Yeah.
COVID blah blah
Yeah.
BS, right? And the coin shortage, and I'm like, well, I'll just take these down to the bank and give them to them, and they can make up whatever story they want.
Wife, I did not do that. Your coin jar is still there, and it's full.
But anyway, so I ended up with a few $1,000s of stuff that was
Whoa.
just sitting in
Yep.
in my closet, right?
Yep.
And so I've always wanted a bottle of Century.
Yep.
I knew a guy that's a big Jack collector and knows other Jack collectors, and he's like, "Hey, I think I can find you one."
Oh, that's right, because you paid.
I paid
oh, boy.
$600 for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
But it's one of the only bottles of Jack in my
Right.
office that I paid anything for. I mean, most of that stuff gets given to me or gifted or
Right.
but I mean, so I not probably not going to open it until the zombie apocalypse, but because it's signed by a couple
Oh,
of different
wow.
people, and
That's
Well,
cool.
this is
Yeah.
this Wyoming whiskey. It's called, like I said, it's called 1872, and that has to do with the Yellowstone National Park Protection Act.
Yep.
That's what this is kind of commemorating.
And then they also had another national parks release that they have, like last year was Yellowstone. It's another separate release, which is a great bottle too. And then they've had 2 releases of that, and now the third one of that line just came out, and it's to, I think, for the Tetons.
Do they limit it to 150 for each
No,
one, or
this was
this is the only one they did that?
Yeah.
Well, it's celebrating the 150th anniversary of Yellowstone National Park, so I can see why they did that. But just it's a beautiful bottle.
yeah,
the label is great. The artwork
the
is,
photography.
Yep.
They talk about the guy that took it.
and it comes in an extremely cool leather case that goes along with it. That's that's. I mean that. How does it feel when you knew you had it?
Well, that's the whole thing. I remember you guys talking about a few weeks ago, the chase or the hunt, and that's what it is for me. Is part of it is researching it, saying, "Hey, this is a cool, unique thing." Is it just kind of a gimmick, and it's going to be the regular bottle, and you're just paying a whole bunch, or is it a
Yeah,
separate
well, that's a good
barrel?
point, though.
And is it a special? Did they do something different? That's things like that. What I look for. I mean, like we were joking about some of the celebrity whiskeys. I've broke down and bottled a bottle of ZZ Top Balcones too, so I'm susceptible. But things like this is what I'm looking for, is like special things that are in my wheelhouse, and that's pretty much it.
And that's what I think is interesting. Is so many people will hunt or chase a lot of these just to have it because it's a rare thing.
Yep.
You seem to be keeping it within a line of things that you generally like to drink, though.
Yeah, and then I'll do some research, and like I
His
said,
list is already huge. Can you imagine what he was?
I know if you
how
were just
big his
chasing.
list was? If it
Yeah.
wasn't stuff he limited to stuff that he wanted.
Oh yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started the raffles and going to everything, and I really appreciate the community around
Yeah.
here for our vendors in the area, and the group has just been fun. It's just
Dakota
been
whiskey
really
territory.
fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been great. Meet a bunch of people. My wife thinks I'm crazy getting up at 2 a.m. to sit out in front of Mr. Liquor. She thinks
That's
I'm
how you're
nuts.
always going to win, Troy. I'm not getting up at 2 in
Yeah.
the morning
Well,
to do that.
I got there last time I went. I got there at 2, and it was 8th in line.
You're
They had
kidding.
people there at 11:30 the night before for a 7:00 release.
I don't think I've ever waited in line for anything in my life like that.
Were they in a tent, like waiting for concert
No.
tickets back in the
You
day?
know, you just sit up your chair in front of it, and we were in the middle of like several other individuals and I at 2 or 3 in the morning, and it's
Well, that's got to be kind of fun, though, too, in a way.
January.
January, not so much.
No, January, not so much. It's like I'm going to put my chair there, and I'll be in the truck.
Drinking your quote unquote coffee.
It
Right.
is. It's coffee. I'm a coffee snob the same way.
So, do you have any bottles in your collection, Troy, that you are never going to open?
I don't know. I'm debating on the one we talked
Right.
about, Jack Daniels. I've recently did a bunch of trading and got the Angelo 90th birthday bottle.
Right.
And I've been hunting that for a while because I heard it's a really good bottle, and that's why I wanted to drink it. But after I traded several Sturgis Rally Jack Daniel bottles for this one, the guy didn't tell me until after we made the deal. Oh yeah, these are autographed. And so it's autographed by Angelo and Frank Bovo. And so I don't know if I want to
Yeah.
open that one.
How many?
There's always later,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
you know?
How many bottles do you think you have?
300 plus.
Okay. That's a hell of a collection, man.
Is this going to be a surprise to your wife, or does she
No,
know?
she knows it. She can
She
see
has
it.
them all on the
She
shelf
walks
downstairs.
past
They're
I didn't
all
know.
put out in the basement. He's good.
No, it's
Well-
in my office on the bookshelf, and
I know.
everybody,
Yeah.
okay. She does give me grief saying you're rearranging things for. No, just
I just
Well,
look,
there is a guy that we've dealt with that has like warehouses full. That
Yeah.
Right.
I think somebody in our circle may have let it slip that she may or may not know about an entire warehouse of stuff.
God.
Like, yeah, she doesn't know about the warehouse and blah blah blah.
But I thought she knew about when they had to use a U-Haul to move here with it, and it was a strictly U-Haul move for one purpose.
Yeah, no, I think this might be a different.
Is that a different person?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
No,
and like,
yeah, no. Tucker, I think, is above board.
well, and that's what's so interesting to me is you guys that'll collect these and that will hunt for these. And Mark Tucker is another one who, probably has 1,000 bottles, I think he says, and he said he only has like 5 that he'll never open.
Yeah, probably something like that. I've got a couple. Like
Yeah, that he's like, those are going to be for I'm just never touching those, whatever he said. But everything else, I will crack the seal on and we'll drink.
And I give samples to everybody. If anybody knows and asks me, I'm more than happy to.
So does the bottle, when you drain it, does it go back on the hunt list, or does it?
If it's able to be huntable again, it does. Yeah.
Wow. Well, this is.
But I've got enough now that it's going to be pretty hard for me to drain them until after I'm retired.
And then is that your plan, Troy? Is just to sit down, crack every single bottle, and just.
Well, I hear all these good things about good for your heart from the French
Sure.
drinking wine. And
You're gonna live forever.
170-year-old grandma says she takes a shot of whiskey every day.
Exactly.
I believe that.
That might be the trick. Well, I think we believe what we want to believe for one.
Right, that's true.
But I think the trick for Grandma to get through 107 drinking a shot of whiskey a day is that she drinks a shot of whiskey a day.
right.
That isn't really in my MO.
I'm pretty good. In my past, I was known to drink Mr. Jack a lot.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I'm moderated. My boss, when he first, one time I shared a picture to my boss after we had put everything on the bookshelf in my office, and he just kind of looked at it. And I'm like, notice, boss, they're not empty. They're cracked.
Yeah.
Now
They're still full.
you wanted to try this this Gypsy Legacy, which is it's of course it's one of the celebrity whiskeys, but not celebrity whiskey just with his name thrown on it. He actually kind of played a part.
Yeah, and also, I mean, he gets his own barrel from Jack for how
Right.
many years? I mean,
Exactly.
that's dedication.
And Eric Church, of course, is the one
Well,
who
and
who made this.
he actually drank it and promoted it on stage.
Yeah.
The group they had before that, I think, were
Well,
sneaking stuff in.
and
You mind?
the Eric Church single barrel was good.
Yeah.
It was
that was
really good.
That
so
was
he
lovely.
obviously I think he knows his whiskey. So what did you think of this, Troy?
It surprised me. It was different. I was kind of expecting a Jack and it's not. It's a good bourbon. It's got a long finish. It's just a little bit different. I'm impressed. He's doing out on his own.
Yeah, I mean that's I think Rob and I kind of felt the same way about it. It's a 7 to 8 year age of the bourbon. It's a 20-year Canadian rye that's in this.
It's going to surprise you.
And then it's an American single malt 4 years. So it's a blend of 3 different types.
Yep.
But it's that 20-year Canadian in here that surprised me. I'm like, that's what I thought was pretty amazing.
I'm again. Most Canadians are ryes, but
Right.
I'm a big Weiser's whiskey fan. I've got collections from. That's one of my oldest bottles is whiskey.
Wow.
From
Well-
before they were distributed in the States, my dad would go fishing in Canada, and I've got bottles from Canada. Before
Well, the
they were here.
Weiser's 18 is one of my favorite
yep.
Canadian
Well,
whiskeys.
your buddy was he somebody you worked with?
Yeah, Shark.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Again, very small town, Rob. We know everybody.
Well, I didn't know.
Most of the time when you hear shark, you either hear Shark and Barney together.
Right, exactly. You
Okay,
do.
all
That's
right.
it.
I hear baby shark.
No, you
No,
don't.
no,
Now, another one that we're drinking here, which I think is, well, I don't know who else has one of these bottles, aside from you, Rob.
There must be somebody other
Maybe.
than me.
We did get a hold of the Jack Daniel's American Single Malt, which
You may
you're-
not make it out of here with this maker's mark. Holy shit.
which you're
So
only
that-
able to get in duty-free shops or at some military bases.
Yep.
And we had a friend coming back that was just in France and London that you texted, and they're like, yeah, we're going to go through the duty-free. We'll look and see, and bam, there it was. So,
Well, I wasn't clear. I texted him and I said, hey, when you get to the airport, look for this. Or maybe, I may have been a little vaguer than that. So I think he was like wandering into liquor stores in London and France.
oh,
or in
trying to
London.
find them there.
I'm like, no. It'll be in the airport.
Yeah,
And they
got it.
found one. Luckily, I didn't try their patience enough and they stopped again. So
Well, let's. I want to know, what did you think of that, Rob?
I like it a lot.
All right.
Did you really?
Tasty.
Troy, did you like it?
I'm a big fan because that one from a couple years ago, the twice barreled
Yeah.
single malt, which is identical, finished in the Oloroso barrels. That was my favorite bottle of that year. And
Really?
through the drawings in that
You
fall.
walked out with
I walked 3 bottles, and so I'm in my second bottle, and I love that bottle.
Wow.
So I'm really was looking forward to this one quite a bit.
I'm hoping that this one gets to be more readily available. You know, that twice barreled was amazing and is still. But
I don't
you didn't like it.
I don't like it.
It was the best bottle I bought that year.
Wow. I don't like it.
Yeah.
God
You
dang
don't
it.
like- you don't like
I
this
don't
one?
like this one.
And
Nope.
I'm not
You didn't
much-
like the twice
I
barrel.
didn't like the twice barrel though either. So that could be
some
it.
Scotch guy you are.
but I'm not much on the single malts myself. So
Right.
No, and neither am I.
there's some I do.
I swear to God, the Jack Rise and the singles, the twice barreled in this one, Jack is just not going to put out something that is subpar.
And I can totally agree with that for sure.
And I honestly think that the charcoal mellowing
Is the key.
helps all of that.
I'm the same way. It's not that rye that I'm not a big rye fan. Also, so I have to throw in, thank you guys for the Sturgis Jack Daniels rally tasting you do every year.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for that. I love that.
Yes, we love it.
How many years have you been now?
2.
Just the
I
2?
knew about the 3 years ago, and I
Yeah.
just kind of wasn't able to make it because I was on call. But otherwise, yeah, thank you guys for sponsoring that.
Well, yeah, we love it. We look forward to it.
a sponsor is a bit of a stretch, I think. We've had a long time partnership with Jack Daniels at the Loud American, and that I think even may predate their involvement in the Sturgis Rally and their sponsorship.
It's going back quite a ways.
Yeah, I mean it's this. Our partnership with them has gone back, I think, almost to the beginning. Somebody will yell at me if I get it wrong. Clint's probably listening. But all of the stuff there is, it's all the money that we raise goes to charity.
Yep.
That's
so awesome.
So it works out for the Loud American. It works out for Jack. I think the people that come to the tasting really enjoy it. Most of the time, they get to try stuff that either hasn't hit the market or won't be here.
I probably won't buy the rye, but I really enjoyed the rye that we got for probably the first people outside of the distillery to taste.
We were at that tasting. I believe it was one of the absolute first to be able to try it. Was that week?
Any sort of a public setting.
In a public setting, yeah. Boy, I just poured this Wyoming 10-year. Boy, you're not kidding.
That's a great glass.
Man, that's delicious. It's sweeter, and I like that. That's what I absolutely. I kind of think I have similar palate. I like the sweeter stuff.
Oh yeah.
If you want me to, I can grab that candy corn whiskey I've got in my office right now. Are you sure?
I'm going to buy a bottle for my boss. So if he's listening, he's a huge candy corn fan. So
is he? Oh,
that's probably going to
okay.
be his Christmas present. Last year it was a 5-pound salted nut bar. I got one of the big.
Oh my God,
Oh
that's
my
great.
God.
So
That's
this
perfect.
year he's probably going to get a candy if he's listening. He's
Nice.
gonna get
Well,
candy corn.
we ruined it for you. We haven't cracked the seal on that yet, so I know Rob has just been super
thank
excited to
God.
do this. Can't
You're
wait.
probably
Should
going
have
to
done it
make
now.
me do that next week.
Yeah,
aren't
we
you?
might. Well, Troy,
What if
this
I have
is
any vacation time coming up.
you don't, pal. This this has been really cool, Troy. The stuff that you've brought up, and it's so much fun to talk. Rob and I have talked before that we like. I understand the collecting, and I understand wanting to just keep the bottles and have as many as you can and stash them away and whatever. If that's your thing, that's your thing. Fine. But just the community, like you've talked about, when it comes to these, every single person that we've met has been willing to share it. I mean, including us. Rob and I have said too, anything we've drank on here that you want to come and try, just send us a message.
Yeah. 90% of the stuff that I have in my house in the office, we can open.
Right.
I could probably.
That's the fun of it,
I
right?
could
I-
probably
it's
be
like-
talked into the other 10% with.
So at the Jack tasting, I won the sign.
Yes.
And,
Well, that's
but
right,
I
you
got
did.
talking, and I had Kevin Barrelman sign it for me. But I was sitting there talking with him for a while, and he was saying, I always have a Jack story. Well, I've got a ton of Jack stories, and it all comes from being with people and just having a good time and talking about the whiskey or other purposes. But I love this too.
So what? Before we wrap this up, Troy, tell me the one thing you're absolutely. You if you could get your hands on it right now, What is it, and how much are you willing to spend on it?
Spend, better not say that one in public.
Because that's automatically what the price is going to be.
Right, exactly.
Give
That's
or
true.
take.
Good point. Right.
The one that I'm kind of hunting for right now is still the Weller CYPB.
Okay.
I just want to. I've had tastes of it, and I've just missed out on bottles at a couple of drawings here and there. Like it was picked at 4th, and I got drawn 5th. You know, things like that.
Right.
But that's the bottle that I'm like hunting for right now.
Okay.
I may go a little over how you explained it. There's when you guys were talking about your way of chasing is like, hey, if somebody says something that's in town and it's over, you know, because I think I don't even know what MSRP for that is, probably in the 70 range.
Probably.
No, I think it was a little higher than that last year.
Was it?
When I think because Tucker got one of them,
Yeah,
and I think it was it wasn't exorbitant though. It
wasn't over 100.
It was 100, 120. I think.
Oh, was it that much?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe.
But I do. But
I think
that's probably the one I'm hunting right now the most is the white label Weller.
Okay.
But it's like you said, we were talking earlier about how the bourbon boom going on right now with all these new craft barrels coming out, craft distilleries, I should say, coming out around the country. There's some just crazy great bottles coming out all over the place. And so, yeah, you can go with your standard Pappy and Weller, Hunting, or E.H. Taylor and the standard usual suspects. But I think there's just some great stuff coming out from these craft places like Wyoming Whiskey.
Absolutely.
Well, and you've either got to be willing to travel or they've got to be willing to
Build
ship
a
it
network.
here. Right. Or you have to build a network.
That's if anything's going to take if anybody takes anything away from this podcast, Troy, it is the fact that you, being a self-professed introvert, kind of coming out of your shell to talk to people in this, that have these same interests, has really paid off for you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I've
don't
made
be
a
afraid.
ton of friends.
Yeah, don't be afraid to have that conversation, especially around this, because you might be sitting with a X amount of number dollar bottle of 1872 Wyoming whiskey, right?
Correct.
Thanks for coming in and talking, Troy, man. This has been a lot of fun, buddy. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much.
Thank you.